Record. Okay, so this is our last class for this whole trip that we had with each other, and I appreciate your participation, and I had a time of my life working with you. All right, cool. All right, so the last theory class is well, general overview of what you might expect doing this job and the possible tools, quote unquote, arsenal that over the time you're going to gather. This is just a small part of that, well, essential part. And then you can build on that. Again, you're not going to buy everything at once. So just buy things as you need them, or even better, if you know that you're going to need something, buy it when the price is right. Right? That's even better. All right, let me see if I can fire it up here. There we go. Got it. All right. So first, I'm going to go over some of the basic tools and equipment that you might need doing this sort of, some people call it cable technician. Well, I don't even know what to call this thing to reflect the whole thing, because to give you the whole big picture of that, because the aspect of well, the assortment of duties and tasks and things that you would need to do is so wide that a cable technician just doesn't give justice to this type of I would say trade. All right. Okay. Just going to go in no particular order, starting from the top left corner. You will need some sort of a laptop or interface such as this. Well, laptop, okay. With the laptop, you will need something that's called a serial interface. And that's pretty much it, like USB, bunch of USB things. The laptop will have to have some sort of way to connect to Ethernet, because sometimes you will have to connect to modems, gateways, and whatnot, and other pieces of equipment in order to set things up. You should know the basic operations of the command prompt, right? Because quite often you're going to have to log in to certain type of equipment with the command prompt, and also with some, like for example, if you need to bridge the modem, like set the modem into a bridge mode, then of course you need to connect to the modem through Ethernet cable, and you will probably be using a browser. Right? Also, you will need some sort of communication software. So if you are talking to a tech support on a higher level, sometimes you connect to the equipment and let them take over your laptop and let them do the thing that needs to be done. So yeah, but for sure, command prompt comments and actually how to get to command prompt, and having some sort of basic communication software. So like a I can't remember because they change all the time. But it will be the communication software that would let you. I'm not sure WhatsApp is one of those. Probably not. That will let the other person to log into your laptop and use it as if it was you. All right. Now, also, basic multimeter. That's a given. You should always have at least that digital multimeter. It's a good idea to have even one of those simple $30–$20 ones from one of the home hardware stores, analog meter, because sometimes you need to see the needle moving. All right, now the other piece of equipment here is so this thing here that thing here, and well, a glorified version of this. Why do I call this and that? All right, well, so first of all here, let's start with this little cable tester. This is just a basic one. You can probably pick it up for like $30 or $40 on all those online shopping things or some of the electrical stores. What it does, it just checks for the wire mapping. So it's a basic test. You install an Ethernet cable, plug this, this is detachable. So you go on the other side, plug it into the outlet, then you go on the other side, the LAN room, and plug it into the patch panel, press a button, and this just is going to give you a wire map just to see if all the connections are done. It's not going to do any length or distance test, not any frequency response test, none of that. It's just a quick and dirty kind of a tester. This one here is something that's called a qualifier. Costs about $1,000. See, price goes a little bit up. And this is the type of equipment that we used in our classroom just to do a quick performance check for the Ethernet links that we did. So what this one will do is, yes, it's going to test for the wire map. It's going to display the wire map on the LCD display. It's going to check for the distance. So if it's longer than 328 feet, then it's going to fail that link on the distance because it's too long. Then it's going to perform also some light duty frequency response tests, and that's pretty much it. So it will qualify the link as, let's say, Cat5e, or it will qualify this thing as link as Cat6 or so on. What else you can do with this? It has the qualifier thing. It has other features. You can test the coaxial cable with that. And also you can use this thing as a toner. Here's a toner or a tone generator, because just a tone generator, because you still need the sniffing probe for that. So you can look for the tone generated by whatever tone generator, either this device or this device. You plug it into Ethernet port and you use the probe on the other side to find the port that this sniffing probe is going to basically find the tone where it is based on the proximity of the tip of the probe here. Yeah. Now you can use it as a tone generator. Also, what you can do with this, I'm just going to go very quickly over that. You can use this thing to flash something that's called flash Ethernet port. Right? What you do is, if the port is active and you don't know where it is on the patch panel, because the LAN room could be huge and there would be hundreds of connections, and if something is not labeled and you really need to find where this desktop location is on the other side in the LAN room, you can plug this qualifier in, set it to to a feature that's called flash Ethernet port or flash port. And what it's going to do is going to produce certain type of signal that on the other side, if this desktop location is plugged in, is basically on the patch panel, and that patch panel is plugged in to a active switch port. It's going to make that switch port, the LEDs on that switch port, flash in a certain way. And sometimes it might take you a while because there's a bunch of flashing lights happening. But then if you look closer, and sometimes it takes 5-10 minutes to find that particular port that's flashing certain way, but it is possible to do. Right? Then the next thing is, which I don't have it included here, is the certifier. Certifier is, as opposed to this $1,000 piece of equipment, certifier is anywhere from $6,000 to $15,000, depending on what features you get with it and what attachments you get with that. So the certifier is going to actually not just qualify the link as Cat5e or Cat6 or Cat7, it is actually going to certify it as such. So that means there are way more rigorous tests that is going to perform in order to give to classify this thing as true Cat 5e link or Cat 6 link. And some clients, some of the bigger clients actually do request a documentation on that. Both the qualifier and the certifier, they have a memory included there that you can save those test results in the memory, and you can name those links, every link that you test, and then you can you can upload this thing onto your PC, and well, you can save this whole, let's say, whole facility, jacks from so and so to jack from to so and so, labeled maybe 200 jacks or whatnot, and that's going to be in a PDF form. You can have it in electronic version, or you can print it on paper and hand it over to client. Okay. This here, we know what that is. This is a fish line. We talked about some of that. This here, this equipment and this bunch of these, they serve as so-called wire pulling helping tools. The fish line, this is a steel fish line. See, it's basically it's wound on this big reel, and you pull it out as much as you need. You can shove it into the pipes and see where it comes up on the other end, or you can push this thing through some of the ceiling space, or you can push that through some of the wall space. If you need some more rigid kind of straight fishing equipment, then you can use those glass rods, fiberglass rods. One thing with different attachments, and they are stackable, so you can just keep pushing them into the ceiling space, and it's going to go in a straight way, and you can just stack them. See, some of them have female threads and male threads. Two things actually. When you join them, make sure you wrap around a little bit of electrical tape so they don't undo, and they do. They do undo. Okay, they will undo themselves, and sometimes it's impossible for you to get at it once the whole thing. So you can just lose them in the ceiling. Right. The other thing is try to use gloves when you're handling that, because those are being bumped and scratched and scuffed and whatnot. And sometimes the fiberglass pieces will chip away. And if you are using your bare hands, especially if you just basically slide your hand on that without realizing, you can end up with having some sort of annoying fiberglass in your hands. Right. So that. Yeah, I didn't mention the toner here. Here's a toner, a very basic piece of equipment. It's a must-have with every infrastructure installer. Quite often you're going to have to trace wires. Yes, remember when I told you that we need to label things, we need to label things, we need to label things. Well, we do, but sometimes you go to a service call and nothing is labeled, or some of the labels are rubbed off, lost, or whatnot, and you need to find out what's what and what's going where. Here's a tone generator, and here's a sniffing probe. It acts on proximity. If this thing is producing an audio tone, this here circuitry can sense that on proximity. So you move it closer to the cable, this thing gets louder. You move it away from the cable that this here is connected to, and the tone gets quieter. So it's a very that thing will not only save you a lot of time, but quite often it will make your job possible at all. All right, a bunch of screwdrivers, and you will find what you need. Basic screwdrivers, and sometimes you will need some specialized screwdrivers. So these are the hand tools. You will also need some screwdriver bits that you can fit into your drill, to your drill, cordless drill. You should also have one hammer action, just a regular drill that you plug into the hydro outlet, because sometimes on the batteries you can't rely. I always, when I was doing this thing, I will have one of these. I will have one of those also, which is stronger, which has got a hammer action. This one I would just use at small drilling jobs and maybe as a screwdriver. The other one I would just use whenever I can with the hammer action and stronger to do the heavier duty. And then I also would have just a regular drill with the cord on it in case the batteries fail or I need to do some more drilling and the batteries just wouldn't handle that. Punch tools, we already know what these are for. We have done that. What have we used? We have used 110, we have used BICS, and I showed you what 66 block looks like and some other ones. So we had a lesson on that, all right? I'm just going to come back quickly to the fish line. Sometimes you're going to get a fish line that's a steel fish line. Sometimes you're going to get a fish that's fiberglass. Right? Fiberglass fish line is, you would use that if you have a bunch of existing cable in the conduit, in a pipe. I would use a fiberglass fish because it's not as abrasive, it's not as aggressive on the existing wires. If you push in a steel fish, there's a chance that you're going to damage some of the existing wires if you use a steel fish line, right? So that's hint, hint. It might be on a test, right? Drill bits, drill bits, drill bits. I just put like a little tiny box of drill bits of different sizes. This is just a small thing. You will use probably some of the butterfly bits, some concrete bits, whatnot, all right? But as you go along, you will know what you need. And sometimes you're going to use longer bits. Sometimes you're going to use those something that's called flexible drill bits, which are about 5 feet long, and they're flexible. You still put them on just on a regular drill head right here on the chuck, and you can still drill into some ceiling spaces or between the walls and things like that. But there are certain ways that you should do it. So first, of course, the thing would be, once you get your first job, do a lot of observing, a lot of watching, shadowing, make notes of what you can see the other technicians are doing, because that's when you learn the most. I can't show you everything. Actually, I could, but I would need about, about a year and a half to 2 years full-time program just teaching you this, right? Ladder, of course. And when it comes to ladder, this is a step ladder, excuse me, and this is like a 6-foot step ladder. Now, what you need on the construction sites, you need to have a working on heights ticket, right? If you're doing some job and using a ladder, if you're on the job site using a ladder and the safety inspector shows up, you can get yourself into a lot of trouble if you don't have something that's called a working on heights ticket. Also, when it comes to working on heights, lift ticket is also a good idea to have, extremely good idea. That would entitle you or let you work on things like scissor lifts, something that's called man lifts, boom lifts, and I believe right now the ticket goes up to 180 feet height. Okay, it will be the mechanical lifts that you can just get into a bucket and use a bunch of joysticks to manipulate this thing, so you can get yourself on certain type of height. Where do you get those? A lot of the rental equipment companies, they do provide that training. On sometimes when you get yourself hired, your employer will get you, will sign you up for a training. Usually it's like a 1 day or 2 days training at a certain facility, and you get trained, and then you get the certification that yes, you actually are legit to use that. If you don't, then you can get yourself in a lot of trouble. And if you don't have a ticket and you're using it and somebody gets injured because of that, then you can get yourself in a lot more trouble. So it's not worth it. Okay, spend those. I'm not sure, sometimes it's $200, $300, $400 these days. Spend that money, but trust me, it's going to come back to you, right? You're going to get your money back on that. All right, let's go to next page here. There you go. Let's take a look at review some of the project stages. Whenever you do the project, now, in the project, you could be something that's called a project manager or project coordinator, or you could be the person that actually goes on the so-called front lines and actually does the job. So there's a coordination between one and the other. Right? Every project starts with a survey, assessment, site work, commissioning, and billing. That's pretty much in a nutshell. sequence of procedures. Let's take a look at what's what, right? So site survey. This is an inspection. I'm going to read that. This is an inspection of an area where work is planned. The type of site survey and the best practices required depend on the nature of the project. Basically, what survey is that, okay, there's a bigger project that needs to be done. Can you go with your notepad and maybe take some camera and do some do some photographs? We need to know what we're up against. Now, it depends on what type of project it is. It depends on what type of service call it is. Could be a service call that something needs to be fixed. That's more complex than just a regular service call. Maybe some wires need to be pulled or added, or maybe it's just a fresh installation, but maybe existing building or something like so. Sometimes survey can last half an hour, 20 minutes. Sometimes a survey can last a whole week because you need to take a look at every corner and plan everything out based on which those notes that you're going to take. New equipment has to be ordered. Some equipment will have to be replaced. Some of the wiring will have to be upgraded, replaced, added. And based on your notes, you're going to, know, because sometimes there are going to be things that are more difficult to install. Maybe the construction is an old construction and maybe 60, 50, 100 years ago, people did not provide for the needs for a Cat 5e to be installed. So things would be sealed, built up. So you need to find ways. A good survey can make the job possible. A good survey can make the job that you can actually make money on it instead of losing money on it. Right? What do you need? You need notepad, camera, tape measure, basic screwdriver kits, because sometimes you need to open some panels and things like that. So basic tools you will need, flashlight, maybe ladder, PPE, always have PPE, because when you go on some certain sites, you're going to require to have a hard hat, you're going to be required to have safety boots. And it's just going to make you that much more professional that say, okay, we need hard hat here. Oh, yeah, I got my own. That's okay. Thank you. Do you have safety? Yes, I do have safety boots. No problem. It just makes things smooth, right? And then the client, when they see somebody working ready for, so there's no problems with that person. Oh, yeah, I have to come back tomorrow because I gotta get my safety boots. It just makes you that much more, legit. In front of the customer, in front of the client. Yes, the guy, this guy or this girl, they know what they're talking about. They are ready for it, right? They're professional. Right? Of course, you need knowledge. All right, assessment. This would be basically creating a quote. You need to price, you need to tally up all the equipment. That's sometimes a lot of long afternoons, mornings, evenings, that you're going to have to make sure that you have, all the smallest bits and pieces that you need for every little detail of the job. You have to tally them up, add the prices, and then you're going to have to calculate a bunch of things, profit on, markup on the equipment. You need to calculate how much time it's going to take per each person, how many person hours it's going to take to do the job. This is where a lot of companies fail. Maybe, if you need maybe 200 jacks, data jacks, you order that, and it just turns out that, oh, you need 20 more jacks. Okay, you're going to bite the bullet, and you're going to, because once you give the quote, you got to fulfill it. But if you think that it's going to take you 2 people 1 week, and it turns out that something wasn't noticed during the survey process, or something was underestimated, and it turns out that it's going to be a month and you need more than 2 people, then of course you can lose money on this project. And needless to say, the objective of the whole game, if you will, is to make money, not to lose money. Right? What do you need? Well, suppliers, distributors for the equipment that you're going to get up. You're not going to go to local hardware store to get those, because that's just not how it's done. You need the prices from, so you need a good relationship with your suppliers, distributors. You need some sort of an office setup because you need to be able to prepare the quote, and of course, you need a lot more knowledge than just a regular, guy on the street, right? To be able to do that. So that's the project manager kind of or project coordinator job. Of course, you make more money doing that. Site work. On the site work, well, installation or service. What do you need? Well, we're going to continue on the next page or pages. Right? What do you need? What do you need? Okay, that's what I'm going to say. Excuse me. Depending on what the job is, you could just use basic tools, or you need to have some specialized equipment, such as maybe you need to order a scissor lift. Maybe that scissor lift has to be ready for your people that you're going to send your technicians on the job site. So they don't have to wait for it. They can use it right away. So it's all kinds of planning and stuff. So site work, it's a fluid thing, but not so fluid. It should be predictable of what needs to be done. Yes, sometimes you're going to come up on some sort of surprises because every building has its own secrets. But for the most part, the whole thing should be predictable and estimatable, if I can say that. Right? Now, what's that commissioning thing here? Well, after you do a project, install a system, let's say maybe like more complicated PA system, like a school PA system, or more complicated telephone system, excuse me, over the bigger facility, then you will need to present what you've done. And a lot of the stuff, sometimes you will need to be trained on how to use whatever that you have installed. Unless it's a franchise, like for example, we used to do Dollar Trees. That was not our job to train the people. We just had to install things, and there will be other crews, hiring crews, they will be doing their own training. But if it's a plant or factory or something, and then you replace the whole telephone system, so basically, let's say you have just replaced 500 telephones, and they are different. Let's say you switched them from the regular conventional system into VoIP system, then those phones can be complicated. It could be they have to be shown. The users have to be shown how to use that phone, that particular phone, how to get into your voicemail, how to do a long distance call, how to bypass some of the restrictions, and how to do a conference call. All these buttons, bells and whistles, and that has to be presented to them. And that's basically what commissioning is, right? So it's a presentation and training, and sometimes you break the people into groups. Like, let's say today we're going to train just office staff on their on how to use that. Then you're going to train because sometimes it's just more than the room can handle, right? Then you might have to break it into groups, right? What do you need? You need you. Of course, you need the audience, and you probably will need some sort of a conference room environment or something like that in order to present the system. So technically, it's called a commissioning. And at the end, what do you need? You need billing. Billing is probably going to be your favorite part of the job because that's where you get the money. And hopefully, you're going to be in green, not in red, or black, not in red. Right? If the job was planned properly, executed properly, finished, then you can cash the money. Now, there are different ways of setting up the billing. The best way of setting up the billing is in stages. So, for example, let's say you have a job that will require $200,000 of equipment purchased, okay? And you don't have $200,000 in your bank available. You don't have cash. Can you still do the job? Yes. And I believe I told you that in previous classes. If you get a line of credit, or if you got a good credit relationship, or sometime you got good relationship with the distributors, that they will let you they will have a limit, maybe $50,000, maybe $100,000, maybe 200, depending on it. It all depends on the size of your company and whatnot. Then what do? Is you get the equipment, deliver that on site, have the owner of whoever is authorized to sign for it. In that moment, the equipment is not your responsibility, it's the owners of the facility responsibility to make sure that nothing happens to it. It has to be all in contract, right? And then as soon as the equipment is delivered, you need to have a check for a certain amount of money that will cover the equipment plus maybe your markup on it, right? So you already have made money, but if you don't get the check, you take the equipment back to the distributor. That's how you can do bigger jobs without having the big bank account, right? And then, of course, if you do enough of them, then you're going to have enough money to do what? Maybe you can just buy your favorite island that you wanted somewhere, okay? Or maybe buy a new car, or maybe more tools to do your job, more jobs, right? There you go. All right, site work. Remember, I was going to come back to it. All right. We are dividing this site work into, let's say, infrastructure type of installation, cabling, basically. After planning and after planning the cable distribution, the rough-in stage begins. The rough-in stage begins. All cables are pulled to the home run, from the home run location to their destinations. What do they write here? The cables are coiled in bundles at both ends, but not terminated. This is just a rough end. You pull them into location and you leave them. You pull them, and at the other side, you just call them up. So just basically wire pulling, wire pulling. It's probably the most efficient way of doing things, because this way you just concentrate on one task that needs to be done. You have one set of tools and you get into the rhythm and you do it. Plus, you need to pull some of the wires before some more construction begins, like maybe drywall is going to be put in. So yes, still it's possible to pull the wires when after the drywall is installed, but it's going to be more timely, right? Time consuming. As I said, the best time window of opportunity for us to get our wires in is before drywall gets put on, installed. And here's the important thing: after the air duct people are gone, they've done the job and they're gone. All right, because if you are working at the same time or before the air duct people are doing their thing, your cables are most likely to suffer. They're going to suffer from some sort of physical damage. Right? Hello, all the air duct people in the world. Please don't hate me. I hate you too. Love you. All right. Anyways, make sure that all the cables are clearly identified at both ends. Couldn't say that enough. Said it a million times. All runs are securely mounted in the ceiling, space, or otherwise raceways, and the work is done according to the local building and electrical code. And make sure that the wires are left in a way that nobody's going to step on them, because there are going to be other trades. So make sure that it's in your interest to secure those wires, that there's going to be the least amount of damage possible by other people doing other jobs, right, around the construction site. Right. Rough-in tools and equipment structures. Cable installation begins with establishing pathways. All right. Free air runs and raceways. Free air runs. That means not in a pipe. Like, for example, this will be a free air run. It's just on the J-hooks, as opposed to cables in the pipe and closed pipe. So main runs should be kept in bundles and suspended independently of any ceiling structures. It's important not to tie the cables to the grid supporting, the ceiling grid supporting rods. We should not be doing that. the reason for that is fire regulations. Believe it or not. If, God forbid, there's a fire, then the fire crews have to go in there, and sometimes they have to take down some of the structure. And if there's so much stuff tied in and interconnected and tied to the ceiling structure, it just makes the job that much more dangerous to the people who are responding as emergency services. So all the cabling should have independent suspension, somewhere in the ceiling or some structure, so it's free, especially free from the rods that hang from the true ceiling and hold the grid for the ceiling tiles. As much as possible, establish straight runs, so pulling multiple cables can be done efficiently. Establish straight runs. How do you establish that? Well, you just look in the ceiling and see if you can spot any straight runs to mount your J-hooks or otherwise raceway there. Sometimes it's nice to just tie a string to one point, then to another point. This way you're establishing a straight line, and just tie it there and mount your J-hooks along that string. J-hooks mounted on the walls or suspended from the ceiling on thread rods are most common in this scenario for the free air runs. Raceways. We'll talk about the threaded rods in a couple of slides down the road. Raceways, well, pipes or otherwise raceways, cable trays, enclosed trays, and so on. As alternative to free air method, closed raceways or cable trays are used. All the raceways should be installed before the cables are run. You're not going to just pull the cable and install a couple more feet of raceway, pull the cable, and it's just not going to do that, right? So all the raceways should be established. Hint, position the J-hooks no further than 4 feet apart to avoid cable sagging. Cable sagging is bad. First of all, it just takes more space than it should. Second of all, which is most important, if you get too much cable sagging, then at the J-hooks, the cables succumb to the pressure, actually, physical pressure on that. It can actually affect the specifications of the cable. All right, remember I talked to you about threaded rods? I'm going to tell you about threaded rods. This is what threaded rods look like. You can go to any hardware store and guarantee you, almost guarantee you, they will have threaded rod section. If you can't spot them, ask the staff. They'll point at you. They'll point you to threaded. They come with different diameters, different gauges, and different lengths, right? They're a cool thing to use. You can use them in very different situations. It's just like Lego blocks, but for grown-ups. All right. So threaded rod, a relatively long rod that is threaded on both ends. The thread might extend along the complete length of the threaded rod. So sometimes you're going to see threaded rod that they just have thread up to a certain length, and then but most of the threaded rods you're going to see thread, and you can cut it to length and use it in whichever way you need. Right? So here's a threaded rod. Here's a threaded rod. Okay, E-I-E-I-O. Right? Okay. Now, see here, what's that? There's a strut channel. Strut channel. What is it? A standardized formed structural system, such as this here. That's what the struts look like. Used in the construction and electrical industries for light structural support. You can actually make a cable tray out of that one. Right? Not a very efficient way of doing it, but you can. As far as cable trays, it's more efficient to just buy one and install it than lose the time on constructing it and then installing it. Well, some people don't understand that. They think, yeah, okay, we got people on site. They can make the cable tray out of the Unistrat. They don't realize it takes time to do it, and you're still paying for the people's time. All right, often supporting wiring, plumbing, or mechanical components such as air conditioning or ventilation systems. So here's that. Now, here is a spring nut, right, over here. This is how things are being used. So if you just have that strut channel mounted in the ceiling, how do you mount threaded rods to that? Like, for example, here, or well, maybe not here, but you can suspend threaded rods through that using the spring nut. Right? Spring nut. How you mount it? Click to watch. Right? Once you download this thing, basically there's a spring here. There's a bit of a channel. Right? This thing is longer than that, so it sits there, and the spring just keeps it together. And you can just screw in the threaded rod in it, and there you go. You have a nice Lego structure for grown-ups going on. Different strut channels. Here's a solid channel, punched channel, half stock channel, and sorry, I just have to hang up the phone. Then there are different channels available, but most of the time you're probably going to have that half slotted channel here, not half stocked, half slotted channel, or the punched channel like that. All right, there's the most common ones. Often, okay, J hooks. They can be metal or they could be plastic, and they are provided. They will actually be specified. You can, for example, with this size of the, let's say this size of the J hook, it is provided to handle so many Cat5e wires, so many Cat6 wires, so many, Cat7 wires, and so on. They do actually have specifications for that. And you can double them up. You can stack them up this way. And look, you can stack them up on threaded rods. You can make almost like a Christmas tree type of a thing. You can actually double side them. You can have one here. You can have one here. So depending on how many wires need to go and where. Right? And they're different sizes. Metal, usually aluminum or steel, and there's some plastic ones. And depending on how they're going to be used, this one, for example, is ceiling mounted J hook. This one is a wall mounted, and this one here is well, it can be mounted on a threaded rod. So depending on on how you're going to use it, you just get those accordingly. All right. Here's another example of J hooks. Now, let's take a look at some of the mounting, because sometimes you need to mount things in the ceiling and you never know what you're going to get. Sometimes you get a wooden ceiling. Sometimes you get concrete ceiling. Sometimes you get a steel T-bar ceiling. Well, when it comes to concrete type of ceiling, common applications or walls, for example, right? This would be, well, threaded rod hanger. You see here, this bolt, this nut here, has a thread inside. You screw that into concrete and you mount the threaded rod. You just turn it right in to that, and voila, there you go. Here's your threaded rod hanging. So threaded rod hangers are quite common. One thing I'm going to point to you is sometimes you get a bare concrete, which is probably the best out of the two situations. And sometimes you get that perforated steel. So there's a concrete ceiling and it's covered, like cladded with a steel layer. There's one word that comes to my mind when I see that, but I'm not going to say it. But, well, you still have to mount it. So how do you mount it? Well, it takes a lot longer than this, and you are going to destroy a lot of drill bits, because first you have to make a hole in the steel, and then you need to use another drill bit to keep drilling into the concrete. You're going to lose a lot, because once you get through that, you're still going to drill into the concrete with the steel drill bit, you're going to doll it up. Right? But sometimes it is what it is. So one way into concrete is using the threaded rod hangers. I just want you to know that things like that exist. Another way is something that's called a drop-in anchor. A little bit different, but same, but different. All right. Well, here's the thread for the threaded rod, or maybe you can do a bolt and do some other equipment mounting on that. Right? Drop-in anchor. For that, you use a heavier hammer action drill. Hilti gun is one of the examples. Click to watch how things are done. Basically, what do? Is you drill right up to the size. You don't go smaller, bigger, that. No, you just drill the size that it needs to be, and it's specified in the data sheets of whatever the drop-in anchor is, what size drill bit needs to be used. Then what you do is you do the punch. You insert the punch in there, and you can use a hammer to expand those wings. And then just so it stays. Sometimes you get an attachment to the hammer drill. So instead of using your hammer, because if you have 1, 2, or 5, that's fine. But if you have like 200 or 300 of those to make, you want to make the job as easy and as efficient as possible, so you don't get injured from prolonged, doing some, certain type of tasks, right? And so there could be an attachment. So you drill the attachment to the drill. You drill the hole, then you flip that, and you just go. All right, and this thing here expands and it stays there, and then you can mount things on it. So these are called drop-in anchors, right? As opposed to, threaded rod hanger. So we look at the threaded rod hanger, drop-in anchors. Now, sometimes you can use something that's called a chemical bond. Especially quite often being used in the cinder blocks. Cinder blocks, the structure is a little bit different. And if you use the drop-in anchors or threaded rod hangers, they wiggle out. And it depending what type of equipment needs to be hung there. Those chemical bonds, these are chemical anchors. You put the bolt in there and you basically squeeze in the chemical thing in there, the goo that hardens, and it is never going to let go in a million years if it's properly done. So here is the cross section right here of a cinder block. There's one side of a cinder block. Here's the other side of the cinder block. It's just injected. That chemical is just injected. And the only thing is that you can't use it right away. You got to wait maybe sometimes 12 hours, 24 hours for this thing to set properly. So you can read this thing here. Well, maybe I can read it. Chemical anchors refer to bonding used between metallic elements and substrate materials. Find out what substrate is. The metallic elements in this case include rods, while the substrate material can be a brick or mortar. Synthetic resin adhesives are used to form the bond. They are highly effective when used in high load applications. Read the specs sometimes on some of those, and you'll be surprised what it is provisioned to handle as far as load. Right. Okay, so we've gone through some of that. What you will see on your journey as if you get a job in this type of field, racks. A typical 19-inch, it's a standard 19-inch rack is a standardized frame or enclosure for mounting multiple electronic equipment modules. Each module has a front panel that is 19 inches wide. Here's in millimeters if you prefer. The 19-inch dimension includes the edges of the ears. What is the rack ears? Do I have the on the amplifier? No, I don't. Basically, What it is that, well, you know what? Let me fire up the Photoshop so I can show you what the rack ears are. It's going to take a couple of seconds. We got time. We're doing good time on this thing. We're almost done here, guys and girls. Come on, Photoshop. File, new. All right. Yeah, this should do. Create. And I'm just going to bring it over here. And let's choose some more friendly color, like dark blue instead of just black here. All right. And let me get a pencil here. Is that a pencil? Oh, it's a pencil too. Let's say here's an amplifier, audio amplifier. And it's the standard 19-inch rackable. You can use this thing with your feet, with the feet, and sometimes you can remove the feet. Right? And quite often the professional equipment. So here is the amplifier. Audio amplifier, professional audio amplifier. All right, so here's got some volume controls, maybe some indicators and whatnot. Now, sometimes you're going to see in the professional amplifiers, you're going to see things like this included. Here, they look like this. Right? And yeah, they go like this. So this here, it's a rack ear, and it will have a couple of holes here. Those are the rack ears, and you're going to see some of the kind of like screws, 1, 2, and 3, and there's going to be the same pattern on the sidewall of the rack ear there, right? So you can add those rack ears, you can mount them here on both sides. And this way, you have the option of mounting. So these are called the rack ears. This way you have the option of mounting the equipment into the rack space. All right, so let's take a look at this thing again here. Common uses include computer servers, telecommunications equipment, networking hardware, audiovisual production gear, and so on. There are different shapes of forms. Some of them are floor mounted. I see this one is just a portable one on wheels. Some of them are floor mounted, so they're permanently mounted to the floor. Some of them are open. It's just a frame with the equipment being installed. Some of them are enclosed. Some of them are wall mounted. Some of them are ceiling mounted and whatnot. There are different types of racks. In fact, we have those desktop mount racks in our labs. If you take a look, that's where the oscilloscopes and the function generators and all that stuff live, in those racks. 19-inch. Where's 19-inch? Okay, so here's different examples of those. Here will be a floor mount huge rack. It will be a smaller wall mount rack. Okay? Now, the 19-inch, okay, it is right from the edge to the edge. All right, see, 19 inches right here, right from here to the very end of here. Right? That's 19 inches. Then, of course, there are, it's not like you need to know that. Just you need to know that's a 19-inch. It's a rack kind of equipment. The rack rails, they are divided into units. Each unit, rack space unit, consists of, well, what is it? 44.5 millimeters or 1.75 inches from top to the bottom. Right? And it includes 3 mounting holes. So some of the equipment would use 1 unit space, like for example, this one here, this PDU, which is the power distribution unit. It's a glorified way of calling it a power bar. It takes 1 U, 1 rack unit. If it was wider, there will be 2 rack units. Some of the equipment take 1 rack unit. They're specified 1U, 2U, 3U, sometimes 4U. I think the oscilloscopes that we have in the labs, I think there are 4Us. Okay. All right. As far as the rack rails, sometimes they are threaded, where you can just screw those rack screws right into those holes. And sometimes they're unloaded with just cavities in which you get to put the clips. It depends what is being decided by whoever was manufacturing things. All right. So this is the last slide, and I could just go on and on and on. However, I'm going to leave you like this, hungry for more. And well, as the last few words, I really enjoyed working with you. Please don't be a stranger. Whenever you're by the college, drop in. You know where I live in the college. Actually, I'm going to be mostly in B1007 right now instead of 6. But if you need any kind of advice or you're stuck with something, by all means, drop me an email and I'll help you with whatever I can. You're my students. Please go tell the world that I'm not ashamed to say that I know you and you know me. Okay. Love you guys. And thank you. Also, the test, I'm going to release that test tonight. It's going to be same way that you're going to have a week to do that, 5 business days, on the same basis that all the other tests were done. Cool. All right. Thank you very much. And I see you when I see you, as always.